And there's the magic bell, which means we have officially tipped off for our debut episode of the SFL NBA/basketball podcast. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome all. It is your boy, Marcus Perez Brennan, joined by my boy, Kyle Burgess, in the chat. Welcome. Say hello to the people. How you feeling, my friend?
Feeling good. I'm feeling good. Excited to talk some ball.
Yeah, we're talking a different kind of ball today. I know you guys might be familiar with our SFL football commentary, but today it is all about the NBA Finals. We're jumping into our basketball coverage, taking flight today. We got a brand new logo, we got some brand new segments. Excited to debut them. And it all starts right here, of course, with the title sequence. Welcome in, everybody. One more time, I'm going to say it, just the whole thing again. It's the SFL basketball show. Marcus, Kyle, presented by SFL Media. We got a loaded episode 1 for you today. We will be chatting about the NBA Finals. We'll be maybe talking about the NBA draft, but spoiler alert, not really off-season buzz either. We will be diving in on the playoffs and the Minnesota Timberwolves, of course, because we got the expertise in the building. To catch everybody up to speed, though, it has been an insane 2025 NBA playoffs up to this point. There was an Aaron Gordon game-winning dunk as time expired. That happened earlier in this playoff series. We had, obviously, the Halliburton choke sign where maybe he celebrated too early, but ended up aging really well because they still beat the Knicks, still snatched the soul of Knicks fans in the Garden. Anthony Edwards and the Wolves, by the way, making it to another conference finals back-to-back before, of course, falling short to the almighty Oklahoma City Thunder. We will chat plenty about them. Kyle, as we're looking at just some of these moments, do you have anything off the top of the dome that has really that you want to talk to the people about the playoffs so far?
I mean, I think just in general, the discourse about ratings being down, um, the NBA not marketing their younger stars as well. But if you watch these games, I don't understand how you can watch these games and not be entertained. I mean, this is some of the highest level of basketball that's been played in the history of the NBA. I would say some of the highest level of skill across the league on all of these teams, and yeah, it's been incredible to watch, especially these younger stars starting to write their their resume more in ink. So
Dude, I'm so with you because I know like some of the the narrative going into this finals even was like two small market teams. NBA is not going to like it for ratings. Like, come on, with these first two games, are you kidding me right now? As soon as I was seeing all the members of the Oklahoma City Thunder team, once they made it to the finals, same thing for the Pacers. Looking at the two rosters and realizing that one of those rosters is now going to be an NBA championship roster is pretty ridiculous.
yeah.
I think it speaks to what you're saying. The level of parity right now in the league, an all-time high. It's going to be the 7th straight year we have a new champion. That is no coincidence here. Nothing since the Warriors repeating with Kevin Durant, which we all know is really a cheat code. And I think that's good for the league. Like you said, Kyle, that's good for basketball. If you're watching these games because you just want to watch some people hoop, that is what you're getting. And we're going to look at the whole bracket here. This is a really cool visual brought to you by the NBA, just.com. Kyle, I think I proposed to you that we had maybe a 2-minute segment here, similar to our 2-minute drill that we did for the NFL. Maybe giving a word, a sentence, whatever you want to say. Some series, not as much to write home about as others. But maybe give us a little taste of what you saw, what you had as a takeaway for each of these series leading into the NBA Finals. We'll obviously dive into the Pacers and Thunder individually here in a second. But I'm going to start those 2 minutes. You want to jump right into it?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Let's get it. 2 minutes. Start now. Go for it, Kyle.
So I think overall in the West, it went a little more traditionally and more to the discourse than the East did. The Thunder rolling through the majority of their series. That Grizzly series was kind of a joke. I think we knew going into it. And then with the injuries they had, it's just a matter of time. To get to that matchup, the Nuggets and the Clippers, an incredible series. We saw some vintage Kawhi, and then we saw the the, the traditional James Harden uh, nothing burger game. Lakers Wolves first round. A lot of people picked the Lakers. A lot of people picked the Lakers. I'll just say, no center though, and that it's tough to play without a center. Rockets Warriors, just a rock fight. Steph getting mauled every second of that game. Into the second round, OKC Denver, another insane series. Nuggets steal one in that first game. Wolves Warriors, we get a little bit lucky. Steph goes down, and then the Thunder just kind of take care of business against my Timberwolves. Unfortunately, in the East, Cavs roll through the Heat, much like that Grizzlies Thunder series. Kind of a joke. Pacers Bucks. Giannis just needs some help, man, and he's probably gonna go find it somewhere else. Knicks Pistons, incredible series. One of my favorite series of the playoffs to watch. Another kind of rock fight, but the Pistons are here to stay. Celtics Magic rolled through them. Knicks Celtics, great series for the first few games. Again, injuries. Pacers Cavs, a great series just to see like the Pacers are for sure here. Like they're not going away. And Pacers Knicks, another also incredible series. In the Garden, Tyrese making it known that he is on a super duper star level.
Superstar, as D Wade said, reacting to his game one game winner. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more about a lot of these guys, a lot of these series, but I'm gonna give it my own try here. See if we can start these 2 minutes over and jump right into the bracket myself. Here we go. Starting, I'll go right corner this time. I'll start with the Cavs. Yeah, yep. Cavs, a lot of chatter. I think they were being talked to similar to OKC that they were really good. Everybody knew they were really good, but we were going to kind of have to see it in the playoffs. It looked like they were going to live up to that. Yes, plowing through the Heat, kind of a joke of series. Agree with you there. Pacers, Bucks. This is where that Halliburton star turn really began. Like you got to remember the game or series ceiling layup here for Tyrese over Giannis, took him straight to the basket, made it look easy, and it's kind of just catapulted from there. But it was cool to see that that's kind of where it started. I agree with you. Giannis probably gone, unfortunately, for Milwaukee. Knicks, Pistons, I am so with you. This series was fire. And Pistons had big leads in, I think, 3 of the first 4 games, only to have them crumble away. There was a really questionable end of the game whistle that if it goes the other way, maybe that series is even going to 7. I don't know. The Celtics, Magic are tough to figure out. I think they need a full season of continuity with Suggs, Wagner, and Banchero because they haven't had like all 3 of them together healthy for a long enough time for me to really have a real opinion of them. But this was the Celtics to lose. They took care of business. Moving on with the Celtics, really tough to see Tatum go down, obviously, in that Knicks series. But even before he went down, the Knicks kind of seemed to have their number. The Celtics were not attacking advantages that they had in that. It was honestly some really confusing coaching to me. Knicks looked a lot better by the end of the series. I don't know if they necessarily were a lot better, though. Pacers plowing through the Cavs. Again, that is where we're talking about this Pacers team at another level now. They made the 1 seed in the East look silly there. And then obviously we'll talk a little bit more about that Knicks Pacers series. Some of the best basketball in terms of just cinema that I can remember in a really long time.
Yeah.
And then obviously finals, we'll jump into that, but going to the West, because I took up all 2 minutes on the East right there. Thunder plow through the Grizzlies. Kind of crazy to think about, like put ourselves back in our shoes. Game 3, Grizzlies had like a 29-point lead before Ja goes down.
Yep.
Obviously everything shit hits the fan and they get swept there. But maybe that's a different series if Ja is fully healthy. Doesn't matter. OKC took care of business. That 7-game series with the game winner from Aaron Gordon was really cool to see the moments he was getting in those first 2 series. If the Nuggets are somehow here, I think like in the finals, if they somehow take care of business against the Thunder, I think we're talking about the Halliburton postseason versus the Aaron Gordon postseason because Aaron Gordon was having some of those moments early on. I agree with you. It's cool to see like prime Kawhi, man. He's just so freaking fun to watch when he's healthy. Wolves, Lakers. I was not one of the people picking the Lakers here. I want LeBron to do well always. I'm one of those LeBron fanboys, unfortunately. But this Wolves team is different, man. And like you said, when there's not a true center with that size and with that skill that the Wolves possessed, you could tell after game 2 that this was not a real series. And the Timberwolves rightfully took care of business there. Rockets, I think, yeah, one of my main takeaways is, damn, they're going to be good for a while if they can keep a lot of their core here, because they pushed the Warriors to the brink. But that same Warriors team didn't have enough gas, I think, to take care of the Wolves there. Wolves took care of them. Excited to talk more about Anthony Edwards and his continued success. Yeah, Nuggets, Thunder, another banger of a series. I had almost forgotten there that the Nuggets had 2 7-game series in the first 2 rounds. They just love to play high-level basketball, don't they? But again, same thing. Put ourselves in the shoes of 2-1 series lead for Denver in that series, right? And really look, was it 2-0? I'm forgetting the exact sequence of it.
Yeah.
It was 2-1.
Mhm.
For the Thunder to bounce back the way they have and basically not look back since that and taking care of business in a big game 7, really impressive stuff. And that brings us, I think, to the finals. Kyle, do you want to just jump straight into some deeper team profiles, these squads?
Let's do it.
Let's do it, please. All right. No more 2-minute timer there. We got our buzzer beaters, and we cannot talk about the 2025 playoffs without the buzzer beaters of Tyrese Halliburton here. And what else is there to say, Kyle, besides this dude has gone from star to superstar in a single postseason? I think you get that kind of company. You get that kind of praise when you have 4 buzzer beaters in the same playoffs, when you're going on the run that the Pacers are going on right now. And to zoom all the way back, entering this season, we had the annual NBA GM surveys, which I thought would be fun to look back at. Not a single GM had the Pacers finishing first, second, or third in the East. And you got to keep in mind, this is a Pacers team that was in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, happened to get swept by the Celtics. So I think people kind of forget about that series because the Celtics did the Celtics thing. But like, they weren't knocking on the door, and I don't think anybody expected them to come back the way that they have this year. And it's been really, really impressive to see how they have answered to that. Even Tyrese has taken note of that kind of criticism, or I guess not even criticism, the lack of attention on them at the beginning. He had a quote that said, after having success last year and that being looked at as a fluke in some people's minds, that's a big motivation. That adds a chip on our shoulder because we know what we're capable of. We don't need to talk about it. We're just about it. And that's what this Pacers team has taken on as their identity. You can see that they are scrappy. You can see that they know nobody really believes in them. They know they weren't picked to beat the Bucks. They know they weren't picked to beat the Cavs. Definitely weren't picked to beat the Knicks. They've been discounted at every single step here. So why not beat the Thunder when everybody is picking the Thunder in this same breath? I've come to really respect this run that the Pacers are on right now. I think we're talking about it being good for basketball. Players having a star turn like this is good for basketball. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, I think like after, people didn't expect them obviously to make the conference finals last year, and people would say, oh, they had some injury luck or, yada yada. And we're comparing it already before this season even started to like the Atlanta Hawks run to the conference finals where they got some injury luck. And it was like, oh, Trae Young might be, cementing himself as like one of the top 10, 15 players in the league. And then we saw how that turned out, obviously. But yeah, this team is different. The construction of this team is different, and I think is just really well thought out from top to bottom. A lot of guys with some question marks that they brought in or kept. A guy like Miles Turner, who's been on the trade market seemingly his entire career, but has stayed there and had some really big moments so far in this playoffs. But yeah, Tyrese Halliburton is the story of their team for sure. These playoffs have been incredible, and his shot making has been insane with that goofy looking shot that works. It's crazy,
dude. Yeah, and he should be a guy that kids with like untraditional shot form study from the beginning. Like, not to have the same exact shot form as he does, but to understand how to make your own work with your play style. And like, he is the epitome of that. Yeah, some crazy numbers on this Tyrese run specifically. I think we've already forgotten about that insane game he had against the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals. 32 points, 15 assists, 12 rebounds, 0 turnovers.
Yep.
0. First player in the playoff history to have 30, 15, 10, and 0 turnovers since those stats were tracked in 1977. Like, literally, he created a new kind of game category. He had a Halliburton. Nobody else has done that. It is ridiculous. And then talking about his clutch gene, absolutely. And this Pacers team as a whole, they've now won 3 games this playoff, despite trailing by 7 or more points in the final minute. In the final minute, only one team in the play-by-play era has won even one such game, and that is the 2014 Thunder in a single playoff run. So again, stupid stuff that they're doing right now. They're doing it obviously with their high-powered offense, but their defense is also clicking at the right time. When they're needing to make these runs, they are getting valuable stops. I don't think enough can be said about the job that Andrew Nebhart has done in these playoffs too. I think he's breaking out as a role player, not only as an alternate ball or playmaker, ball handler when Tyrese is off ball, but also as a defender. He's been taking on a lot of Shea. And it takes a lot to make Shea look pedestrian. He's still getting his 35 points a game. But, I mean, Nembhard was the guy defending him in game 1 where Shea could have pulled up and hit a mid-ranger that could have iced the game. Nembhard was right there, made that shot difficult. It's a total team effort for the Pacers right now.
And he's another guy,
go ahead.
You know, when teams can load up on Halliburton, you see the Thunder trying to load up on Halliburton and Siakam with their big guys. It's like you need a third guy who can create. And, you know, you see like in that viral step back late in the game in that game 1 that he had over Shea, like he has an offensive bag that he can go to, and having that kind of guy is crucial in a deep run like this.
Dude, it's been really cool to see Team Canada on the world stage right now. Like they look crazy right now. Lou Dort, they got Shea, obviously, Nembhard. I think Benedict Mathurin is on the Canadian national team too. Like, kind of nuts what the representation has been for our neighbors up north. One other thing, I think it's really cool. We talked about it a little bit off camera, but it's really cool to have the perspective of what Tyrese was doing in Paris for the Olympics, where he plays 26 minutes total throughout that entire the exhibition games included. Like, he was not getting any run. As you can see, this viral tweet that I remember that showed some good self-awareness when he said, when you don't do nothing on the group project and still get an A. For him to now be the A+ student on this group project in real time, I think it's really cool. It's hard not to root for those kind of guys. And he's been doing it all year long. Like, on the right there, that picture that I have there is actually a regular season game against the Bucks that ended up being pretty important in terms of standings to get them home court advantage in the playoffs. But I remember just casually turning that game on during the regular season, just wanting to watch some action. And the Pacers were down 3 in the closing seconds. Tyrese hits this ridiculous 4-point play to win it. And that really was just a little bit of a sneak preview to what he was going to do in the playoffs. It's been really cool to see his clutch gene on full display. You got anything else about this Pacers team, about Tyrese in general, before we talk about what our pre-finals picks were on them?
Yeah, just to echo kind of what you were saying about that regular season game, I think that game was later in the season, and they finished really well. Like a lot of these teams that made deep runs, like post All-Star break, had really, really strong finishes. There's a Pacers Wolves game that Wolves were in control most of the game. It's down to the fourth quarter, midway through the fourth. It's still 11, 12 points. You know, if this sounds familiar at all. And Pacers start hitting shots. Obi Toppin goes berserk from 3, literally can't miss. Wolves are up 1, miss a shot, goes the other way. Obi Toppin hits a ridiculous 3 over into Kill. Alexander Walker in the corner to win the game. So yeah, they've been working on this like insane clutch gene in the regular season too. This isn't something that just like, oh, magically they're hitting shots in the fourth quarter now. Like, good for them. It's like, no, this has been going on. This is who they are. This isn't just a just a crazy run. It's
They
built
are
up.
built for this.
Yeah.
They're built 100%. Yeah, I didn't even remember that specific Wolves game, but I can speak to a couple other examples right here. In the regular season, the Pacers also overcame deficits of 22 points against the Clippers. That was February 6th. 19 points against the Wizards. Shouldn't have been down 19 against the Wizards maybe in the first place, but 27 points, which was a franchise record against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who ended up beating in the playoffs, of course, all of which were on the road, by the way. And then just in the playoffs, they had that 20-point deficit against the Bucks that they overcame, 20 and 19-point deficits in two different games against the Cavaliers, and then a 17-point deficit, which we all remember, against the Knicks, which was that crazy 9-point comeback in the final minute that I remember even once I knew, because I missed it live, I knew the final score. And even knowing the final score, watching the final minute, I was like, how do they do this? Like, there is not enough time for them to come back, and they do it anyway. That is what this team has been built on. It's been really cool. I think Reggie even said it in our chat at one point. We are not worthy of this Pacers run right now. That's definitely how I am feeling. And with that, this would be a great opportunity for Kill, if he was with us, to dance on his own prediction of the Pacers in 6. He was actually the only SFL Media panel member that took the Pacers in this series. We will reveal the rest of our picks in a second. Spoiler alert, clearly by this graphic, we did not pick the Pacers, but Killian did in 6 games. And if they do win in 6 games, even if they win in 7, if they somehow win in 5, win the next 3, then either way, he gets to celebrate his prediction here a little bit more in our next episode. But for the time being, do you have any thoughts or reflections on what Killian might have seen picking the Pacers in 6?
I think he just believed more in what the Pacers had done this playoffs, and maybe that they had beaten some stronger competition. But also, I think, which we'll get to, similar to the Pacers, like a lot of people and a lot of teams and players who have spoken about it don't have a ton of respect for the OKC Thunder, and feel like there's been a lot of quotes from players like, "Yeah, we're not scared of them. Like, I feel like we can beat them." They probably should have been. So we'll get to that very shortly.
No, 100%. Yeah, I think that's the perfect segue to jump into what has been an almighty Oklahoma City Thunder team. 68 regular season wins, which I feel like we almost like became numb to, because they were like just in a separate category in the standings at some point towards the end of the stretch in the wild West. They were just that good. I think they ended up being put in that same category. If you remember, Kyle, like I think people were doing that to the Celtics last year, where like they were clearly the best team, and so it was like boring to talk about the
Yeah,
best
you
team.
just
So
like, oh, we'll forget about them until the playoffs come, and then by the time the playoffs do come, you're like, I haven't really heard much about them, which is also back to the NBA marketing issue. I don't think they were on national TV games nearly as much as they should have been, or I don't think they were a Christmas Day game. So
I'm so glad you brought that up, because in doing like research for this, I found like a really compelling story. I want to give, I think, credit. I'll put in the description the actual ESPN writer that did the whole like deep dive. But yeah, the Pacers and the Thunder. It's crazy to think about it with hindsight now. Neither one of them were on the Christmas Day schedule, and in fact, they played each other on December 26th, the next day, in a non-televised game that like nobody cared about. And there was a really cool article. Again, I'll link it so our viewers can check it out. Talking about like the mixed feelings that those players had, feeling disrespected, rightfully so. Obviously the Pacers coming off at that point in Eastern Conference Finals appearance, injuries or not, and for the Thunder, I mean, Shea was number 1 in the MVP ladder at that point. I think they'd won like 8 straight going into Christmas. It looked pretty silly for neither one of them to be on that stage. And so from that point forward, if I'm not mistaken, they have the 2 best records in the NBA. I know at the very least since January 1st, they have the best records in the league. So the best 2 teams are here, and we're getting treated to that. And yeah, to both of our points there, the Thunder have just been that good team all season long. It almost got boring to talk about at some point. but they are fully here, which I think you used that phrase earlier. This isn't the team that could be good down the road anymore. Chet is a current Defensive Player of the Year candidate, like worthy candidate. Jalen Williams was not only an all-star, but also all-defensive this year too. And then Shea obviously winning his MVP. What else can be said about him? Alex Caruso, maybe like has been one of the best individual defenders this entire playoff run. What he was doing against Jokic in the Nuggets series was ridiculous. This Thunder team is good. And I got plenty more stats and stuff to throw at you about them. But do you have any first impressions as somebody, unfortunately, that did have to fall victim to this Thunder team?
Yeah, I saw it up close and personal. I mean, this team can go 10 players deep, and they're all like playoff caliber guys. They all are like play the right way, play the same way, understand the concept, understand what they want to have happen on either side of the court. And, you know, nine nights out of 10, they execute it. But yeah, another, like I talked about how the Pacers are an incredibly well constructed team. I think the Thunder are like the blueprint of how to do it, you know. And we'll get to it later too, more in depth. But just like how Paul George was part of both these teams, trading him away helped build the foundation for this team, for both teams. Obviously, bringing in Shea, who at the time no one could have seen him becoming an MVP. A lot of people thought he was a good young player. Some people might have thought he had all-star, all NBA potential. And then all those picks, which they've turned into Jalen Williams, who was a 8th overall pick, maybe even later than that. Like he was not a top 5 pick. And then, a little bit of luck getting the Chet pick bumped up in the lottery from, I think they had the 4th or 5th best odds, bumped up to number 2 in a draft that those top 2 guys are pretty legit in Paolo and Chet.
Just to jump in with Jalen Williams is a 12th pick. Yeah.
12th pick. Okay.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Similarly to like Tyrese is a guy who picked pretty late, but Jalen Williams is all an NBA guy this year. And then in the offseason, just bringing in the 2 pieces that they need. I mean, rebounding was an issue. They brought in Isaiah Hartenstein on a pretty big contract, but not unreasonable, especially looking back now with the cap going up every year. And then making that Alex Caruso trade, identifying Josh Giddey as a player, another incredible draft pick. They hit on all their draft picks, which you just have to accept. Identifying Josh Giddey as a guy who maybe doesn't fit exactly what we want, in an identity for a player, especially as a point guard next to Shea. And then making an incredible trade for a guy who's proven, won a championship, doing basically what he's doing now. And I think at that time of that trade, which I think was a good trade for the Bulls too, and bringing in a good young player in Josh Giddey, which I'll let Killian and Reggie talk about at some point. But when they made that trade after the Hartenstein signing, I think a lot of people at the time were like, "Oh no! What have they done? It's gonna be kind of scary." And then we forgot about him for a while through the regular season. But I think in that moment, a lot of people were like, "Oh, they might have done something there." And then they've showed us that they indeed have done something.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Presti is playing a different video game than everybody else. If the rest of the league is playing my league, he's got sliders maxed out. The dude still has 13 first-round picks in the next 7 years, Kyle. On top of all of this,
they have a pretty nice pick in this draft. They have the 14th or 13th pick.
It's ridiculous. They set themselves up perfectly. That is being a good GM. That is, yes, being a good evaluator of talent. Also, building a culture from the ground up, which I think is the perfect segue. Also, think about what the 2012 to 2014 Thunder were, and thinking about the finals team that actually stole Game 1 against the Heat. And I think what would have been that 2012 NBA Finals,
Yep.
like what the view from like the next 10 years looked like at the time. I think many of us imagined, oh wow, this young Thunder team, like they're going to be back, like they're going to be in the finals for years to come.
Yeah.
They haven't been back until this moment. And what is crazier is that they have an MVP now. Like we've already listed all the accolades, and they are still well equipped to like dominate this run for the foreseeable future. Like you could argue like Chet has not even scratched the ceiling yet. You could argue like Jalen Williams has not scratched his ceiling yet. And if
Mm.
they find some way to finagle the roster and keep the core intact while doing what I believe Sam Presti can do, like a version of what he did this past offseason, every offseason, like flip assets, flip picks, flip expiring contracts to fill the holes of the roster. They feel poised for a long run. I don't know how you feel about that, Kyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the only thing that really stands in the way of it is this new CBA and the fact that I think the Celtics are kind of dealing with this now a little bit. Obviously, a lot of their pieces that are making a lot of money who are rumored to be moved this summer, they brought in through trades, but like drafting Tatum and Brown, like that's how you want to build your team, homegrown through the draft. But both those guys, like on max contracts, like it's tough to have a sustainable roster and have decent enough pieces on like minimums, for it to last. And that's, in the next 2 3 years when they have to give Chet and Jalen Williams these big contracts after they're making all NBA and all star and all that kind of stuff. It's gonna get dicey. But like you said, when they hit on all their draft picks who they can trade because their other teams want them, they're on good contracts, and they still have all these other picks from all these other trades, they can bring in guys on good contracts that other teams that are maybe looking for younger players to kind of rebuild, like an Alex Caruso, they can pull those guys in, and all those guys obviously want to play for the Thunder because they're going to be in contention for a long time. But even that's a down the road problem. I think even in the next 2 or 3 years, they could rattle off three wins or three rings. But in the West, it is going to be tricky, and now they're going to be the hunted, like the Nuggets were. I would say a couple years ago, like a team like Timberwolves ran into the Nuggets that first round and got taken down. And we're like, okay, we need to rebuild our team to beat this team because we're gonna run into them at some point. They did that last year. Took them down, but then ran into some other problems. Obviously, then Luka dismantled their defense and yada yada yada. But then similarly, you run into this team, and then you have to start thinking, I need guys who can handle the ball at all positions, pretty much all times. I need guys who aren't defensive liabilities on the court pretty much at all times. Like this is what the Thunder are going to make you look like if you're going to have a chance against them, and that's a high bar. So I
The
don't know.
matchup problems, dude, like just it is frightening for sure.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna have to find somebody that can match up lengthwise with Chet, but can also like move laterally and go meet him at the perimeter when he wants to shoot. Like, and then you can, even if you're the Thunder, I feel like you can long term build around him at either the 5 or the 4. Like you have lineup flexibility depending
Yep.
on what other pieces you have around them. Shea being able to handle the way he can at 6'6", like he moves like somebody who's like he moves like Jalen Brunson while having the length of like a true dynamic wing like guard kind of hybrid. It's crazy, man. They have struck gold, and I think that is why they are here. I did want to touch on a couple other cool little footnotes. Isaiah Joe and the other Jalen Williams. We talked about all NBA, all defensive Jalen Williams with an E on the left there. But Jalen Williams with the Y and the I on the right actually is the first player of Vietnamese descent to play in the finals. That's a cool little anecdote there. And then also him and Isaiah Joe became one of the first high school teammates to ever suit up together for the NBA finals, which is a kind of insane journey. They were both. I have a little bit of a background info on that. They were both the Arkansas Players of the Year in high school, and crazy to think that they're actually on the same squad. Two NBA players are now in the finals, and they did not actually win their state championship. They were runners up. Um, but maybe they can remedy that right now and get a championship as NBA teammates. Anything else on this Thunder run before we jump into our own picks here, Kyle?
Just kind of to touch on their run through the playoffs a bit
Oh
more.
yeah, that's perfect.
The Grizzlies matchup, obviously, a sweep was probably imminent, especially with the jaw injury. But that Nuggets series, I mean, people thought, maybe the Nuggets are figuring some stuff out. A lot of the talk was like Nuggets are running a ton of zone against their offense, and they feel like they're mucking up where Shea wants to get to, sending doubles at him. Um, but in hindsight, I think that series going 7 games is in large part just a testament to Jokic still being the best player in the world, and being able to carry a team that was maybe 6 deep, and one of those guys having a bad shoulder, another of those guys being an aging Russell Westbrook, who's very limited. So
And without their NBA champion head coach anymore.
yeah, two teams that thought it was a good idea to fire their head coach right before the playoffs started. Which the Nuggets made it to the second round and made it to Game 7 for the second year in a row. So maybe it did not work out. Ran into the Thunder and lost, which I think is fair. But and yeah, in the conference finals, it's tough. We'll get into it in a bit, but
I mean, that might have worked out for the New York Knicks if Mike Malone's the next head coach for New York. But yeah, I still, that's especially the Nuggets one really puzzles me. I still don't really know, like, would the only success have been if the interim head coach now, like actual head coach, won a championship? Like, or what would have been a failure for Mike Malone? Like, would they have also inevitably fired him if they got like this far and then lost in 7 to the Thunder?
I think they would have, and that's why I don't understand why they didn't just wait and do it after the season. But it must have been some issues in that locker room or between, because they obviously fired their GM at the same time. There was clearly some tension there, and maybe they thought giving the keys to a guy who the players really like can give some juice to power through some kind of a playoff run, which they kind of did, but you know same exiting point the last 2 years isn't where you want to be with Jokic on your team.
Yeah, I think that's the asterisk there. You have what I think we both agree is the most talented player on the planet right now, and you have to maximize that talent. You don't like it almost feels like a wasted year anytime you can't get him the deepest possible playoff run. But that leaves us, Kyle, with our official Thunder picks. We have to look at them in the mirror right now. I'll go find Reggie's rhyme because he had a nice little one of the not actual haikus, but the haikus that people had been joking about throughout the playoff run. So I'll find his little rhyme. But we both did pick OKC in 5. What were you thinking when you made that pick, and how are you feeling now?
I was thinking kind of that like the Wolves and the Pacers in a lot of ways are similar and kind of on a similar level, in terms of their relationship to Thunder. Thinking like the Pacers can definitely steal one of these games early, but I just think the Thunder are too good and too smart, and will figure out what the Pacers are doing. The only caveat was just that both these teams play with a lot of pace, but the Pacers play with, I think, a little bit more and thrive off of that, especially just in not necessarily turnover based or turnover generated pace, just like out of the backcourt off of makes and like just pace in the half court, that could propel maybe a second win, maybe even a third win. But in the end, I think OKC is too disciplined and we'll finish this thing in 5. And I think, after that first game, hesitated a little bit, at least in the 5, but I still think pretty confident in the fact that the Thunder are going to win the series.
I think that's where I'm at too. I think I wouldn't have been surprised if Indianapolis or Indiana, if the Indiana Pacers had stolen one or two of the earlier games. I think I was a little surprised that it was game 1 that they stole.
Right.
And so that one kind of changed my perspective a little bit, where I'd almost lean, if I could amend it, I'd probably lean OKC in 6. That feels like a little bit of a cop-out, but I do still think that OKC is who I lean. They just look too good, and they look like they flexed a muscle game 2. Like it didn't look like it didn't look. It looked like they did everything right to get the same lead that they did in game 1, but it looked different once they got that lead. Like they stayed aggressive. They never really let Indiana get back within that like 10-point range at any point. And that felt like a learning experience in real time. Like I thought back to that series we were just talking about against the Nuggets, where I think they had to confront a similar situation. They might have thought they were hot stuff early in that series. Being down 2-1 against Jokic is going to make you like look yourself in the mirror real quick.
Yeah.
And they made the necessary adjustments. And so I feel like they know they can crawl back in this kind of moment. I think they have their own chip on their shoulder, just like Indiana does. And I'm with you. I still lean OKC. I'll even still lean OKC in 5 at this point. But these Pacers, I don't want to keep betting against them. And so I almost hope I'm wrong, because that would just make for an even better series. But I'm with you. OKC looks just too good. And here's officially Reggie's little rhyme that I found. It's Halliburton, your dad is flirting. Call it curtains. OKC in 5.
Oh,
Okay. So there's Reggie's official chime in right there with his OKC in 5 pick. But I'm excited to see what tonight actually has in store for us. The last little footnote we'll have on the actual finals matchups, we can break down these actual individual games real quick. We touched on it a little bit, but the whole world reacted to that ridiculous Pacers comeback, which officially that game was a 15-point comeback, I believe. I'm getting all of their comebacks mixed up at this point. But yeah, they were down 15 in the 4th of this game. As you see, the whole sports world reacted. You got Patrick Mahomes saying, Helly, Enrique Agumbawale, who knows a little bit about going on a crazy basketball run, by the way, said Halliburton is on the craziest run I've ever seen, OMG. We got Tyrese simply saying, the other Tyrese simply saying, wow. Magic chiming in, saying that Hallie does it again. Caitlin Clark, by the way, Indiana basketball in an all-time great place with the Fever and the Pacers playing the same arena right now. And then, obviously, my favorite of these tweets was perhaps the best modern sales pitch for shoes in our like basketball existence. It's got to be the shoes. A nod, of course, to the famous Spike Lee, Michael Jordan collab in the 90s. And super cool, like for his debut of those shoes, by the way, to come in a game winner. Like, come on, that's free advertising for the best of them right there. What were your thoughts? We talked about it a little bit, but let me just hand it off to you about what that game 1 was like to experience for you.
It felt like a repeat of a game from the Wolves series where, like, first quarter, it's pretty back and forth. You're thinking, all right, Pacers can hang around, make this a game, and then the Thunder just keep pushing that lead further and further, and they'll go on these little 2 or 3 possession runs where you feel like you can't even get the ball over half court, and whoever's dribbling the ball up is just finding a way to get the ball out of their hands without giving it to the other team. Man, Pacers, I think they're the best 3-point shooting team throughout the playoffs. I think they're shooting almost, and especially from the corner, they're shooting almost 50%. I think it's like 49% in the corners throughout the playoffs. Guys like Neesmith, Toppin, Nemhard, all coming up pretty big and keeping them in that game. But yeah, the Thunder, I think even in the third, when the Pacers were starting to come back a little bit, and early in the fourth, I still thought, I mean, the Thunder are just going to go on one of their crazy defensive spurted runs and close this game out. But, you know, Thunder started to miss a couple shots. Pacers feasting off those misses and getting the ball up the court. Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah, incredible is the best way to sum it up. Just stupid stuff again. Yeah, it was 15 points officially, and that they came back from in that fourth quarter. And looking at some of these graphics or these stats here, pardon me, in the first half, Kyle, they had 45 points on 54 possessions and 19 turnovers. So 45 points, 54 possessions. Second half, they had 66 points on 48 possessions with only 5 turnovers, cutting it 14 in the single half. And then that final shot, by the way, to take the lead with 0.3 seconds left, that was the latest winner in an NBA Finals game since Michael Jordan's buzzer beater for the Chicago Bulls in Game 1 of the 1997 NBA Finals against the Jazz. So insane stuff. Some good company to be in right there. Another crazy stat about that in particular was that was the Pacers' first lead of the game with 0.3 seconds left, which is the latest into a game a team has ever had their first lead in finals game, at least in the last 50 years here.
Yeah.
So it's just the Pacers doing Pacers things right now. I feel like there's going to be a postseason run that we're going to appreciate even more as the years go by. Like I feel like have romanticized like the We Believe Warriors that won one series as an 8 seed against the Mavs for what they were able to accomplish. I think we're going to, no matter what happens with this Pacers run at the end of it, I think we're going to look back at it like that and just appreciate it. It's being ridiculously high level of basketball like we have never seen before. Halliburton, 13 of 15 on game tying or go ahead shots in the final 2 minutes this season. 86%. Just ridiculous. And the last little fact I'll throw in about Halliburton right there is that he actually has 31 hockey assists in the playoffs, a stat that I feel like that they should track officially in the box score.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is tied for the most with Steph Curry in 2022 for any player in any postseason in 12 years since they've tracked that. Wow. So another level of Halliburton's game that he's just, I think, goes underappreciated. And yeah, Kyle, do what you got to do. I'm going to jump straight into game 2 here of this finals. Yeah, do your thing. Because as impressive as that victory was for the Indiana Pacers in game 1, it was a really impressive response here for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Again, putting their foot down with a big 123 to 107 victory here. Shea dropping 34, but really it was the entire Thunder bench that stole the show here. Alex Caruso, who we've given a little bit of flowers to in this pod already, had 20 points off the bench. Aaron Wiggins, who went from G League to prominent role player on this finals squad, had 18 points himself. Chet bounced back from a rough game 1 output, had 15. And then Jalen Williams, who we've been singing his praises, that basically the Robin right now to Shea's Batman, had 19 points himself. That was at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different Thunder players with at least 15 points there. Everybody was contributing. And I thought another important takeaway for me was that Lou Dort really made Hallie uncomfortable in this one. I think he had only 3 points or maybe even a little bit less or somewhere around there entering the fourth quarter. He had 17 points to finish the game, but really he got cooking when the game was already out of hand. I think they need to get him going earlier. They need to get him shooting aggressively more often because he goes as far as the team is going to go. He is the engine of their squad. Like when he's moving the ball, when he's confident in his shot, the whole team is confident. I think he needs to do a little bit better job setting the tone in game 3 here today. The big turning point for me in this game was the 19-2 run that the Thunder went on in the second quarter. Turned a 6-point game into a 23-point lead for OKC. And it was actually the whole thing was a masterclass in OKC doing OKC things. They were getting points off turnovers, wide open shots based off of good ball movement. And that really was when you felt them get a stranglehold of the game that they never let go of at that point. I don't think the Pacers were even within a dozen points at any point for the rest of the game after that run. And then last but not least, we know how loud and rowdy that crowd can get, but they got loud at one point in that game. The decibel level hit, let's see, 100 decibels at one point during the game, which for comparison, a chainsaw found out is 110 decibels. So it was getting loud as hell in there. And very resilient Thunder team, which is not a new thing. They don't lose back-to-back very often this year. In fact, the Thunder are now 18-2 this year, including the NBA Cup coming off a loss. And by the way, in 18 of those wins, 12 of them have been by double digit, which goes along with their NBA best 54 double-digit victories this season. They know how to flip the script in a big way. I sang some praises for the Thunder and their response in game 2 here, Kyle. Did you have anything else to note?
Yeah, I think that game 1 statistically was more of an anomaly than it seemed just watching it for the Thunder in terms of it being a poor performance for them. Even with the lead that they built up before that fourth quarter comeback, they were out rebounded by the Pacers in the game by over 17 rebounds. They were out assisted by 11. Pacers shot 48% from the field in game 1. Thunder shot 40. Pacers shot 46% from 3 in game 1. Thunder shot 36, which isn't like 36 is about league average, It's not bad, but the big one, which we talked about, that in that first half, that massive turnover number that they had in game 1, 19. In the game, they finished with 25, but they only got 11 points off of 25 turnovers. That's hard to do. And in game 2, only 15 turnovers, but 14 points off those turnovers. That's a lot more efficient. So I think it was just a get right game for them. I think the first time playing this Pacers team can be a little disorienting with just the speed at which they play and guys flying around and how many passes they throw around. It's pretty insane. I didn't have it pulled up, but there's a pretty crazy Halliburton stat comparing him to quarterbacks and like how many throws he had and his like completion percentage and like the length of all the passes added up. I don't know. It's pretty ridiculous compared to the rest of the league, like how the ball swings around. And yeah, I think going into game 3, the Thunder just need to continue to enforce their will, and especially in the first half. I think if you can build up one of those big leads and go on one of those crazy 19-2 style runs, obviously you can never count this Pacers team out, but that's how they want to win these games. That's how they've won games all year. So we'll see going into game 3, not or it's obviously in Indiana, and OKC is insanely dominant at home. I think they've only lost the 2 home games in the postseason, both of which were buzzer beaters, the Aaron Gordon shot and the Halliburton shot. Their margin of victory at home is just insane. They have a pretty good record away too, but that Indiana crowd is pretty ridiculous too, and they're gonna be fired up, knowing that they got to get at least one of these games, and I think game 3 is going to be the more likely one for them to get. Speaking from experience with this team, it's just so hard game to game, like just getting the energy to go up against this blitzkrieg of a defense. So you got to feed off of that energy that you get, and like trying to throw them off their game as fast as you can, and try to build some kind of a league, get some kind of momentum. So I think game 3 and game 4 they need to win one of them for sure to have a chance in the series. But I do think tonight is the one that they need to get. I think game 4 would be tough. And going back to OKC down 3-1, it's a wrap.
Yeah. Yeah, that is insurmountable if they find themselves in that position. But I'm with you. I mean, if they win tonight, I will be singing an entirely different tune about what this finals matchup could end up looking like.
Sure.
I'm with you. They have to win one of these two, which seems silly to say at home, but when you're talking about a historically good team like what this Thunder team looks like they could be, that is a tall task. So let's see if they can get it done. I think that's the perfect segue because we can put our money where our mouths are here, Kyle. Let's officially make our NBA Finals picks for tonight. I think I had to throw in this little Paul George graphic because we gave a little nod to him earlier. Both of these teams absolutely would not be where they are right now if they didn't have Paul George and if they didn't trade him away to acquire some really valuable assets that have absolutely put them in this position as contenders, which is a shame too, because man, the Paul George Indiana days were really fun to look back on,
Yeah.
and people sleep on how good he was in OKC. He was
I think his best year was at OKC.
MVP caliber, was literally like top 3 in almost every important metric on offense and defense at his position. Dude was absolutely a monster. He was traded at an all-time peak in value too. We didn't really realize it at the time, but
Another great move by Sam Presti that people don't talk about that much is like re-signing Paul George.
Yeah,
because he was a free agent at the time,
mm-hmm.
and they had been kind of disappointing, and getting him to stay in OKC, have another incredible year, and use that chip to build your potential dynasty is pretty crazy.
They played their cards so perfect. It's almost frustrating to watch. And it has gotten them in this position, so they deserve all the credit, absolutely. And sorry, playoff P, but this one is not sponsored by you, although you are definitely responsible for where these teams are in the moment right now. I think we got to pick officially who we think is going to get it done tonight, Kyle. We already revealed to each other before the game or before this podcast. I'll start the timer just to give us a little marker here. But I will reveal to the audience that I am picking OKC with medium confidence. We're bringing back our NFL pick'em scale. We'll do low, medium, high for any NBA pick'ems that we do. So I went medium here for OKC. We talked about it a little bit. This team is just good. Obviously, both teams are good to be at this point, but this other team feels different when we know what they can do on offense, and it almost feels like what they're historically good at is defense. It's crazy to think that they are actually elite on both ends of the floor, and you need that in a high stamina, a high pace, fast paced game like what these two like to play. Both of these squads, like you said, I think the Thunder are comfortable playing at the Pacers' speed. I don't think anybody can play at the Pacers' pace the way that the Pacers can. But the Thunder, I think, are one of the few teams that can kind of make the Pacers play like how they want the Thunder to play, because you at some point you have to be able to guard the really unique size and skill combination that the Thunder have on the court. I found it interesting at times the different combinations that the Pacers have had with like kind of rotating Turner on the floor, Siakam kind of switching between, I think, being the dominant guy in the paint. When you got the size on the other side of Hartenstein and Holmgren, I think you have a little bit more lineup flexibility with OKC and what they can do than what the Pacers have. But they have answered the bell. You talked about Obi Toppin going like nuclear in that random Wolves game. It looks like he has just been ready anytime that they've needed him for this playoff run too, him and Andrew Nebhard. So I want a good game. I want a banger of a game. If I had to pick if it's going to be close or not, I'm saying this is one of the closer games we'll get for the rest of the series, most likely. But I'm leaning OKC. I think they're ready for this. I think, like, again, game two is kind of flexing a muscle that I needed to see for me to feel really confident picking them the rest of the way. And they did just that. I think they hopefully make me look good and win the next three. And the Thunder in 5 prediction can be accurate. But we'll see. What are you thinking here, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm thinking similar thoughts. I'm thinking OKC wins tonight with medium confidence. Yeah, I just think, 2 games in, they've started to figure out how they want to play against the Pacers, and how they need to play to close games, especially in the fourth against this team, because they're gonna get up to a lead at some point, either in the first half, the third quarter. They're gonna go on a run and build a lead. It's if they can hold on to it. Another thing I forgot to mention in that game one, I think because they've been experimenting with the double big lineup, playing just Chet at the 5, just Hartenstein at the 5. In that first game, both those guys' minutes were pretty low, like 20-ish minutes or less. And then game two, both those guys' minutes were closer to like 25-ish. Because they played a little bit of the small ball lineup in that game one, and I think Pacers, especially rebounding, with if they're playing small and they have a guy like Siakam out there who's done so much. His name hasn't been brought up nearly enough this podcast, I will say. Like, he's been incredible these playoffs, and a great running mate for Tyrese. So I think if the Pacers are going to have a chance tonight, like guys like Siakam are going to have to be dominant. Turner's going to have to be dominant, especially on the glass against guys like Chet when Chet's out there by himself. But inevitably, I think it's going to be too tough. I think OKC will pull it out.
I really appreciate the Spicy P shout out because you're absolutely right. I don't think Pascal has gotten enough credit for any of this Pacers run. I mean, Halliburton has had the signature moments, but it has been Pascal has been the consistent presence in every playoff game, basically, for Indiana. Even the couple games or like stretches that Tyrese would like disappear in the Knicks series, it was Pascal that would crawl and bring them back into the game. Yes, and he's an NBA champion. On top of that, if he can flex what he has been able to flex before, I think that is a huge advantage for the Pacers. And I also like that you brought up Chet because, I mean, he was pretty mediocre game one. I think only 6 points and only 15 points in this game two. Even in the blowout, he definitely has not had the dominant presence that I think he's been able to have in some other series. And I do think that's because of the unique combinations that the Pacers have to answer them. I think you're right that is like the NFL battle of the trenches almost, that it's not as fun to talk about or not as clickbaity as the battle of the star guards and Shea and Tyrese. But it is the big guys. It is the battle of the boards. It is going to be who's going to be willing to risk getting dunked on to block a shot when it really matters, that I think is going to potentially swing the momentum of this series in a big way. And I know, and I think it's especially important that you brought up Pascal for that reason. I know he's the kind of guy that can answer the bell in that circumstance. We don't know that for sure about Chet yet. We don't know that for sure about Isaiah Hartenstein on the biggest stage here. So I think that this is a really good litmus test for both squads here. The guys who haven't been in this moment before, see if they can really fill in those shoes. And the guys that have, if they can lean on that championship pedigree, that could be a bigger difference here than I think and more people are talking about. I'm with you there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were you going to say something else, sir?
No, just agreeing. Yep, absolutely.
Spicy Pete deserves another shout out there. And I think the Wolves deserve a little bit of shout out here today for you, Kyle.
Sure.
It's going to be the debut of our Wolves Den here. Obviously, I'll let you lead the way, but coming off of back-to-back deep runs into the playoffs, where is the pulse of the Timberwolf fan base as it stands right now on June 11th? I didn't even know what day it is. Tell me, Kyle.
I think in general, the fan base is happy with our season overall. Obviously, the way we went out in the playoffs, losing again in 5 games in the Western Conference Finals in pretty spectacular fashion, especially in that last game, was tough. But for a franchise that has not won a lot at any level, to go back to back to the conference finals is something to hang your hat on, at least a little bit, you know. Um, and our franchise player taking another step, adding another insane skill to his bag and showcasing it this season. I think they're feeling all right, but I think this offseason is going to be crucial, pivotal for the future of the team and Ant's career on the team, 100%.
And I want you to lead us through that. I feel like I gotta make this more of a ceremonious like moment right here. We're gonna do a little ow ow as we jump into the Wolves Den with our expert Kyle. I'll give you this intro slide so that I can get you onto your actual informational slides here. But Kyle, tell us before we jump into that, how'd you become a Wolves fan, man? And why are you still a Wolves fan, man?
Well, so my Minnesota fandom started with the Vikings. I'm a fan of the Vikings since like 2007, 8, 9. Got super into them on that Brett Favre run, and that heartbreaking loss to the Saints in the NFC Championship. Anyways, and didn't really get into basketball. Sorry, say that again.
I just had to say Bounty Gate right there.
Oh yeah, Bounty Gate. Let's talk. People don't know about Bounty Gate. Didn't really get into basketball as a fan until later in high school. I loved playing basketball, obviously, just like with my friends growing up, and watched a lot of college basketball with my parents. Would take me to Northern Iowa Panthers games. Shout out UNI Panthers. So yeah, when I was like, I want to start watching some NBA, some high level basketball, I was like, well, I might as well watch the Timberwolves. Minnesota sports, Vikings, makes sense, right? And at the time, Cat was in his rookie sophomore year when I started following him. So I was like, Cat's a fun young player. Seems like they're on the up. Andrew Wiggins, Zach LaVine, these guys can fly and get buckets. And I was like, yeah, this is a team I'm gonna emotionally attach myself to for years to come.
And then Jimmy Butler had the famous Jimmy Butler practice, and
yes, he
that
did.
kind of set the tone for a couple of years, huh?
Yeah, I think that was kind of my first real like Vikings-ish moment as a Wolf fan. It's like brought me back down to earth. Like, yeah, all right.
So we don't deserve good things.
Yeah, that kind of vibe. But here we are. So good things have been happening.
Here, I was gonna say, here we freaking are, because they have fully arrived. Similar to what we're talking about, like OKC, this isn't a team that like could be good down the road anymore. They're good. They've made back-to-back Western Conference Finals. Anthony Edwards is what, 23, and has been almost anointed as like the new face of the NBA. Talk to me more. I will not interrupt you anymore. Just talk some Wolves, man. Hit me.
That's fine. Yeah, Anthony Edwards, that draft, and that season leading up to it, was pretty wild. I was a huge when the D'Angelo Russell trade dropped. I was like, our team is saved. Like, this is it. D'Lo and Cat, our buddies. This is gonna be the team. It's gonna make it happen. Saw how that turned out. But yeah, landing the number 1 pick in a draft with LaMelo Ball and guys like James Wiseman, who at the time it was like, this dude's athletic freak, so big, he can handle the ball, yada yada yada. But then there was this Anthony Edwards dude who had some comments that like, yeah, like, I love playing football, like, football's dope. People were like, does this dude love basketball at all? Like, what's going on? It's worked out. it has definitely worked out. He has turned into our franchise player, and it's been built by a couple different regimes. The guy who drafted him, Gerson Rosas, now in the Knicks front office, who he was let go for some nefarious activities, personal stuff that we don't need to get into. But in this draft, Anthony Edwards, number one, Jaden McDaniels, also drafted in 2020, later in the first round. So Gerson Rosas kind of set the foundation for the future of this team. But then, at the time, we didn't know he was going to be the future franchise player. We still had Karl Anthony Towns, who was making All NBA and lighting the league on fire as the greatest shooting big man of all time. And that pairing kind of worked. It had its moments. And then the Wolves brought in Tim Conley, GM from Denver, who I think is one of the best GMs in the league, selfishly. Came in, immediately made the Rudy Gobert trade, which everyone, including myself, was like, what? Rudy Gobert? The dude who gets played off the court in the playoffs? But he's really batted an incredible percentage so far in his moves in the draft and in his trades. Moves that at the time seemed kind of crazy with the season that happened before it. So we'll get into kind of this current season and the trade that started it off right before the training camp. Trading away that former franchise player, Karl Anthony Towns, in the eve of training camp, split the fan base, I think. A lot of people were pretty sick of Cat because of his defensive deficiencies and, we like to call it stray voltage. Offense just kind of hit or miss, and like, is this a guy who can actually win, or is this like a good stats guy on a bad team? Was kind of the mark that he was getting.
And I gotta say, I feel like a lot of the criticism he was getting, at least defensively or hustle wise, like that showed up, I think, in that Knicks Pacers series big time down the stretch with that Pacers pace. I can't tell you the amount of times, and you could also blame Tom Thibodeau and his rotation on this, that I saw Cat just gassed, like jogging, when the Pacers were already like had three guys in transition. Like, and I know that's a small little sample size, but I think that's the kind of thing that they were trying to avoid, right? Or trying to get rid of.
For sure. And part of remedying that was bringing in Rudy Gobert. He's like, okay, Cat, as the center, the rim protector of your defense, is not going to be good enough to get you far in the playoffs or win you a championship. So they asked him to slide to the four, brought in the rim protecting big man in the league, Rudy Gobert, to play beside him. It was incredibly wonky for half of that first season. All of the people hating on that trade were looking pretty smart, which was most people, saying it was one of the worst trades ever. But it ended up working out. Cat sliding to the four and kind of changing his game in a lot of ways, which I give him a lot of credit for. That's not an easy thing to do. To have Rudy Gobert brought in to play your position and being asked to guard fours who in the modern NBA are 6'6", 190-pound guards, basically, on a lot of teams. And obviously he struggled in learning that for a bit, but in the 23-24 playoff run was guarding Kevin Durant on the perimeter and holding his own, and then being asked to guard Jokic while Rudy roams and holding his own for as much as you can against Nikola Jokic. So I think a lot of those defensive deficiencies and woes kind of got remedied a little bit. And obviously coming off of that Nuggets win, But with the Western Conference Finals against the Mavs still in the back of a lot of people's minds, like he shot about as bad as he could shoot and played about as bad as he could play in that 5-game loss to the Mavs. Still, with that, I think pretty much everyone in the Wolves fan base was pretty shocked when they saw this trade roll across their feet. And bringing in a guy like Julius Randle, who, similar to Cat, if has an outside perception and a perception of fans that had him on his team, as kind of a big stats, not winning player kind of guy. But getting Dante DiVincenzo in that trade, getting a first round pick that conveyed this year in that trade. And the financial flexibility, which we'll get to probably in another offseason podcast, and I can get all nerdy with my cap sheet, salary cap stuff. But yeah, it really, really ballsy move right before the season to trade the former franchise player for a guy in Julius Randle that is incredibly polarizing and had really no playoff success or playoff moments for a team with high hopes that just made the conference finals for the first time in 20 plus years. But yeah, throughout the season, especially towards the end of the season, he proved himself to be a winning player, to be able to step up in those moments. But we will get into the nitty gritty of the timeline of this year. Blockbuster trade, like we talked about, brought in Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo in that first round pick. Similarly to when the Rudy trade happened in that first year with Rudy, it just looked really wonky. I think Rudy Gobert is a tough player to learn how to play with, especially on the offensive end, because he's not a floor spacer. It just takes up a lot of space, and he's always looking to screen. You got to know where he's at and when to throw the lob, which no one can still do on this team. Offense looked congested, and the defensive chemistry, because in the 23-24 season, that team was the best defense in the league and built its bones on being that. And they tried to continue that identity going into this year, but Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, who's a good defender, just looked like they still didn't have the defensive scheme figured out. And obviously, it's tough to figure that out right when you get traded right before training camp. And neither of those new players in the first really few months played to their potential outside of some spurts and Randle having some big offensive nights. Questions began to arise pretty quickly. Their long-term fit, specifically Julius Randle, because Dante DiVincenzo on a good contract, younger player. A lot of fans started to speculate. Okay, the Cat trade might have just been to get off of Cat's contract, bring in a guy like DiVincenzo, who's a great fit next to Ant, and then probably retrade Randle at the deadline, get some second round picks, kind of just reset the team a little bit. And at the same time, Coach Chris Finch started to get questioned a little bit as to which we were about 500, and that coming off of a conference finals year, being 500 at halfway through the years, it's not where you want to be. Another move that Tim Connolly made last year was in the draft, trading another future first round pick to move up in the draft for an undersized point guard in Rob Dillingham, who halfway through the year had really gotten no run outside of garbage time. Other younger players, Terrence Shannon Jr. and Jalen Clark, really hadn't gotten much run either. And Chris Finch, a really good, well-respected coach in the first few years of his tenure on the Timberwolves, I think his seat was starting to get a little hot, at least externally. I think internally the team was never close to firing him. But After the new year, some big injuries to Rudy, Julius, and Dante created some more opportunities, forcing Finch to play Terrence Shannon Jr., play Jalen Clark, give Rob Dillingham some run, and just play some more like smaller lineups that enabled like Ant, Naz Reid playing at the five, uh, Jaden, who primarily is known for his defense, getting his offense going a little bit more. Is a guy who mainly in like a 3-and-D role, and hasn't really been a great 3-point shooter. I think the coaches and him at some point in that short run got together and figured out like we need to figure out some other way to get some offense because we need it. Because teams are at this point in Ant's career, teams are throwing 2-3 guys at him the whole time. There's a lot of post game quotes throughout this year and some tough losses where Ant's complaining about getting doubled and complaining about getting doubled and getting off the ball, and his teammates aren't making shots. So that was a tough time during the year, but eventually guys started to hit shots, opening up the floor for him a little bit more. And then after the All-Star break, Julius Randle, Dante, Rudy, all those guys came back, and there was a quote from Julius, I'll paraphrase, when he was asked about his improved performance after the All-Star break on both sides of the ball, like how his time away affected his improvement. And he talked about how just like watching the team from a distance, especially like Ant, Jaden, how they were getting to their offense and what the team needed from him, that helped a lot. And what the team needed was playmaking. Julius Randle, a really underrated part of his game, is he's an incredible passer off the drive, and he started to figure out that maybe I don't need to go ISO to get to a tough contested fadeaway. I need to go ISO, draw a double, and kick out to these shooters who were starting to hit some shots, and that really opened up the offense for this team. Another guy I haven't mentioned, Mike Conley. It started to look like he might hit his age slump pretty hard this year. His 3-point shot wasn't falling quite as well. Minutes were down, which was expected because of his age. But Julius Randle really filled that playmaking gap. After the All-Star break, Wolves finished the season 18-8 with an 8.6 net rating, fourth best over that period of time. Ended the season incredibly strong. But yeah, Anthony Edwards in his 5th year in the league, which is pretty crazy, just at 23 years old. In the offseason, he decided, I'm just going to shoot threes. And boy, did he. Led the league in three-pointers made at 40% plus clip, and became the 5th ever player to make over 300 threes in a season, which I think that list will continue to grow for sure. Earned his 2nd All-NBA appearance, which is pretty incredible.
Because Malik Beasley was on that list this year too, right?
Absolutely. Former Wolves legend. Yeah. I think it's Steph, Clay, Malik Beasley, and forgetting the 5th guy, but pretty good company to be with. And that 3-pointer really became like the main engine of the Wolves offense. Like it was pretty much the number one option to get the team going. Pull up 3 off of Rudy screens, which that's one of the more underrated parts of Rudy's game is his screening, especially for a guy like Ant. And yeah, that really carried the team for a lot of the season, and just forces teams to play like, especially in the pick and roll. You can't play drop against Ant. He's gonna light you up if your big is dropped. So forces the big to come up and allows guys more lanes to cut. Yeah, just an incredible year for Ant. I think cut back on some of his defensive deficiencies, especially off ball. A lot of like people love to talk about Ant as an incredible defender, which he is when the ball is in front of his face. um, if there's one guy that's trying to score on him, he's maybe the best defender in the league. But that's not how basketball works. That's team sport. Teams understand that and try to get him running around as much as they can because, listen, carrying the team offensively night in and night out, like it's gonna wear you out. You can't play as hard as you possibly can on both sides of the ball every night. It's just not possible. That being said, going into next season, I expect him to take even another step, even if it's a small step forward. A neck and neck end of the season for the West. It was pretty ridiculous. Every win, I think everyone was checking the standings to see who the matchup was going to be. But a week or 2 weeks out, they still could have been a play-in team. There was a chance that they could fall out of the playoffs entirely. But they scraped together enough wins to get a first-round matchup against the Lakers, exercise some demons against Luka Doncic. Yeah, a lot of people picked the Lakers going into that series, who I think also had a really good finish to the season. I think the Wolves, Lakers, and Warriors were three of the best West teams in the last All-Star break through the rest of the season, outside of the Thunder, obviously. But yeah, they really took care of business. And another big issue with this team, stemming even throughout Ant's career, even a little bit before, is their clutch time performance. This team, offensively and defensively, has been really, really bad in the clutch. A lot of that's been with the ball in Ant's hands. His shooting percentage to tie or win the game is pretty abysmal. Which that's very last shot of the game is tough. A lot of guys have bad percentages there, other than Tyrese Halliburton. But the clutch time net rating the last few years has just been abysmal. And in the Lakers series, a lot of those games were pretty close. I mean, looking back on this run, a lot of people will see, beat them in 5, gentlemen sweep. They probably just took care of business, which they did. But those games were tough. Those games were coming down to the wire, and the guys were making plays on both ends. And injury luck in the second round against a Warriors team that, I'll be honest, I was pretty scared of, just because of the speed that they play with, and the guy like Steph Curry, who historically has played really well against us. With him taken out, it's just tough to go back and analyze that series very much. Took care of business there. I think the main thing in that series to look back on was that Julius Randle was incredible. Probably some of the best basketball of his career. Going right at Draymond Green's chest, forcing him to admit that he lost the matchup, which I hadn't heard him talk like that basically ever. Which is good for him to get out in front of that, because if you look at the tape, it's pretty brutal. And making the case that he can be a vital piece on a playoff winning team. And making the case for him to be a long-term fit next to Ant, with his playmaking and relieving some of that pressure. But then in the third round, they played this OKC team that we have been talking about as just a buzzsaw of a team. The defense of OKC really just strangled the Wolves' offense. And with Ant getting doubled, tripled, getting gap helped to death, barely being able to get the passes off to guys who need to hit contested threes, and we're missing them a lot. And having Rudy Gobert out there, not being able to space the floor, clogging the paint, setting screens for Ant that guys like Caruso just run through and just don't allow themselves to be screened. And kind of exposing that the Ant needs somebody with the ball in their hands to let him roam. Just take some pressure off. A guy that probably is a perimeter player, probably a backcourt partner and not a front court partner in Julius Randle.
As somebody who is an outside observer, I feel like another thing that I kept noticing, like off of what the Thunder were doing to make the Wolves look uncomfortable. Like Lou Dort is just like the guy I would print out in a lab to guard Anthony Edwards.
100%.
Like
He's the best player in the league that guards Ant.
Yeah, just like for speed, size, like being able to get up in his grill in a way that I feel like some people wouldn't even have the confidence to do. Where like Lou Dort knows that he's that guy on defense. He's the torture chamber for a reason.
Yeah. And when Lou Dort checks out, Alex Caruso's checking in. Who is equally as unafraid, who just got finished guarding Nikola Jokic.
Yeah.
For 7 games.
So I guess I would just put in there too that I definitely feel like that's another one of the Thunder are just that insane, like built to guard 1 through 5, no matter who they're facing, including Anthony Edwards. Yeah,
for sure. And going back to that Warriors series, the Warriors are a great defensive team, one of the better defenses last year. Another turnover generating team. And the Wolves have been bad. Another historical issue with this team outside of clutch time play is their tendency to turn the ball over. So going into that Warrior series, that's one of the other main concerns I had was if they turn Minnesota over as much as they can, this can make this series and these games a lot closer. The Thunder are the turnover team. And so many times in so many of these games in this series, they went on ridiculous runs by turning the Wolves over literally like 3 or 4 possessions in a row. So the ball gets in Ant's hand first. Rudy comes up to screen, doesn't get rid of whoever's guarding him, rescreens, maybe gets a tiny bit of space, passes off to someone who has nowhere to go, passes it back to Ant. It took him 7 or 8 seconds to get the ball up the court, so now it's down to 4 or 5 seconds. Ant Hail Mary drives into the paint, passes off to someone who takes an impossible shot. So that's going into this offseason and a big issue that they're going to have to address because now the Thunder are the team you're going to have to get past in the West, unfortunately. And I think you've seen the amount of pressure that Ant can and can't handle. And I think really any player can or can't handle, at least at his position. And I think they're going to be looking at some help, some ball handling help. It might not be a big name, and it might be off their bench. Might be a guy in Rob Dillingham who has a really strong handle and is a confident shot maker, shot creator, and can play make a little bit. Who will get some more minutes and can hopefully let Ant run around off the ball. A guy who has turned himself into one of the best shooters in the league, I think should be used schematically off ball in pin downs and getting him easier, cleaner threes. Because a lot of the threes he shot this year, tough, self-created, like pull-up shots. And he led the league in threes doing that. If you have a true floor general out there, who Mike Conley at this point in his career can't be, but who hopefully can coach the next guy in being Rob Dillingham. But we'll see. I think going into this offseason, they have so many different paths to shaping this team around Ant, which we'll get into on probably a different pod some of the more juicier off-season stuff. But I'll just say this. I'll leave you with this. Nikhil Alexander-Walker, incredible rotational piece for them this year. Who we'll talk about briefly here too. Cousins with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, which is pretty ridiculous playing against your cousin in the Western Conference Finals. And a couple years ago, or not a couple years ago. Yeah, I'm trying to think. In the play-in game the Wolves played against the Thunder, I think this is Chet's rookie year, but Nikhil Alexander-Walker was one of his breakout defensive moments for the Wolves, because at the time he was kind of a throw-in piece with the Mike Conley trade when we sent out D'Lo, another Tim Conley masterpiece. Showed out against his cousin and made a name for himself in that Denver series. But now Shea has grown into the MVP, and Nikhil unfortunately didn't have many answers for him. But hopefully next year, after some text exchanges or family reunion beefs, he can figure something out. Nikhil Alexander-Walker.
Yeah, go ahead.
My initial point: unrestricted free agent this summer. Was on a ridiculously cheap deal last 2 years, but has blossomed into a guy who I think is a playoff player through and through. Could 100% see him on a finals winning rotation. Julius Randle has a player option next year. Naz Reid has a player option next year. That's 3 of their top 7 guys. I got a lot of questions. Rudy Gobert, who is extreme floor raiser in the regular season defensively. His minutes get almost chopped in half in the playoffs. It's just how it is. It's just how it's going to be. He's not going to. You can't teach an old dog new hook shots, unfortunately. If he's tried doing little push shots. It's never going to happen. Yeah, the questions are abundant. And Tim Conley has quite a summer laid out in front of him. But very optimistic about this team going into next year. As long as Anthony Edwards is on this team, I think we have a chance. So
I'm with you, dude. I think we said it in our 243 chat at one point. I mean, Mike didn't get his first championship till he was 28, 27. Same for LeBron. I don't think they even made it this far, from what I'm trying to remember. I think
LeBron made the finals pretty quickly, but
and even that though got swept by the Spurs.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And I think it could have been easy to write off that he wasn't ready for that moment, and he was when he was ready for that moment.
Absolutely.
I think it's cool. You are absolutely on an upward trajectory, and it's cool to see that as somebody who I know roots for the Wolves from afar through you.
Mm-hmm.
They have fully arrived, and it's exciting to see that, man. And I think it's going to be a fun off season for us on this podcast, because I'm just thinking about some of the. I want you to put on your GM hat a couple of times and make your own mock off season, make some of your own decisions, what you think would be better suited for the team and during the big stretch of hopefully getting into the championship in the next couple of years, maximizing this ant window. And yeah, real quickly about Nikhil Alexander-Walker and Shea, just such a cool story. I think these are the kind of stories I will want to talk about in my own segment that I'll mention here in a little bit. But how can you not root for that on a human level? Two cousins that have been hooping together since middle school, high school in Toronto. I even saw a spotlight on their upbringing in basketball, and there was a point where Nikhil basically considered Shea's dad his uncle, his own father. So they are like that. They're not just people that happen to be cousins and
right
and are now in the NBA. They've been battling for years to come, And so it was cool, like just removing like the basketball analysis for a little bit to see, like I feel like you could see a little bit of that street ball come out. Like I feel like you could see a little bit of the
Yeah,
like I've seen this trick before. Like this one isn't working on me, buddy.
yeah. You see, like, when the Keels matched up with him, because he's coming off the bench. Jaden is the main matchup for Shea, but when the Keels guarding him, like you can see he's got a little more, like he's down a little lower in his stance. Like he's ready for that for sure.
100%. And yeah, it's hard to not root for those kind of stories. And yeah, Nikhil, like you said, very interesting position contract wise right now. I think he has displayed that he is definitely at least worth role player money at this point in the league. And that is nothing to shake your head at in the modern NBA. And yeah, so super cool story. I appreciate the deep dive in these Wolves, Kyle. I wanna keep doing these deep dives. I'm gonna keep leaning on your expertise for that because you are right. Huge off season for Minnesota here, trying to maximize on this Anthony Edwards era. You got anything else you want to say on the Wolves before we fly through our last two little segments here?
I'll save it. I'll save the rest. I could talk all night, but I'll save it for another pod.
And I will take you up on that for another pod. Absolutely. You better believe we're going to have an off-season special. Little special thing for you here is should have given you a disclaimer that there's going to be a Tony Snell warning there. But you have now been warned. Tony Snell is an all-time favorite for those of you that might not know of Killian, who is one of our panelists here. I think some people who are basketball nerds would know Tony Snell for having the Tony Snell game of like 30 plus minutes, 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 anything. But Killian has always had a special place in his heart, and therefore this podcast has a special place in our heart for Tony Snell. But this is all to say that along with the Wolves Den for our basketball coverage, in the future we will be also having Double Pen, bringing a little bit of Chicago flair here. This will be Reggie and Kill's segment where they're going to talk Chicago sports, mainly Bulls. But when they don't want to talk Bulls, we'll let Killian go on a couple of Chicago White Sox tangents if needed. And I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek for what our slides will look like. They are not finalized. And if you look hard, yes, there is another Tony Snell sighting there at the bottom. But we will dive all into, like Kyle mentioned earlier, into the Josh Giddey trade, into what the Bulls may have cost themselves by hitting a meaningless half-court shot and eventually missing out on Cooper Flag by like one lottery ball, perhaps. A very interesting offseason outcoming for the Chicago Bulls, too, who found themselves playing some fun basketball down the stretch, despite not playing in meaningful basketball towards the end of the season. Reggie is always going to bring his brilliant betting and analysis, his insight as well to the equation. So you can count on a lot more from both he and Killian. And then for your boy, I'm going to debut the MPB's locker room segment right here. I'm an NBA free agent. For those of you that don't know, I was a Chicago Bulls fan at one point until Mr. Tom Thibodeau drove Derrick Rose's ACL and his career into the ground, and my fandom went with it. And I've kind of been looking for a team to call my own for a while now. I got a little bit of Pistons inspiration. I got some Wolves representing. Been to a Lakers playoff game myself. I think I'm well versed in the NBA, and I'm a hooper through and through. So I will have no problem talking basketball. But if I get an NBA team outside of this segment by the end of it, like I think that's a cool bonus too. And if you can look real quick, I'll even do the spark notes of the players that are on the screen right now. Obviously, I'm a huge Michigan State sports fan for those that know me. So I got some Spartans representing. Got Xavier Tillman on the left there, NBA champ with the Celtics. Gary Harris, who will probably be traded. He has a team option for the Magic and fell out of a rotation for a team that was a 7 seed. So take that as you will. But then I also have Andre Iguodala, who is a jersey that I own. Russell Westbrook, a player that I emulated and was one of my idols in the sport as I first fell in love with it. People don't talk about prime Russell Westbrook enough already. The erasure of it already has gotten me really pissed off. People are forgetting that this man broke a record that somebody thought, or many people thought, would never be broken, with the Oscar Robertson averaging a triple-double in the season. And the man did it multiple times. Also one of the only dudes I knew that had a 20-20-20 game at one point. But also got to shout out Kawhi Leonard, a player who I've admired on both sides of the floor for forever. Also have his jersey. That's why he's on this list. Same for Andre Drummond, who another person people sleep on. I don't think there's a better rebounder in the league than prime Andre Drummond. And then Draymond Green, I almost didn't even include him on this list, but I feel like it was an obligatory Michigan State nod there. But he's on the top of the list to be cut from this segment as we progress through the season, just so you know.
All-time
And then
great.
all time great, all time great. That's all you can really say about the man right there. Karl Anthony Towns, Dominican, of course. I would argue the best Dominican player in NBA history at this point in terms of pure talent. But Al Horford, I'd say the most accomplished so far, an NBA champ right there, had to represent two Dominicans. And then Jaren Jackson, also a Spartan to his right. And then LeBron James is my favorite player of all time. Do I have qualms with what he has done to the modern game and flopping and foul baiting? Yes. Do I think that there are points in his career where I hated the man and did not like what he stood for basketball? Also, yes. I've come to the point where I appreciate him, though, and he is a player that I will always enjoy watching, and I will be sad when he hangs it up. So I'm going to include him on this list too. But really, I just want to talk about all things basketball. It is my favorite sport to play and to talk about. As much as I am an NFL junkie, and I think more of a Cardinals expert than any other NBA team, I do think basketball is what gets me going almost more than any sport still. Have a couple little shout outs to fun basketball moments that I'll unpack throughout the podcast, including Kyle. You might remember that bottom left. There was a promo at Western Michigan, shooting some balls into a Meijer shopping cart. That was one of the highlights of my Western Michigan basketball days. I was not on the team, for anybody that is wondering, but I did get a free Meijer gift card out of that. But I just love hooping, and I love talking about hoops with my boys. So that's what this segment will be for the foreseeable future. I want to talk a lot of WNBA too. We all started a W fantasy league this past season. We're in with my sister as well. The women's sport is on fire right now. It's an all-time good place. Obviously, people know about Caitlin Clark, but there are faces all across the league: Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu. Like the league is in a really good place right now. Women's hoops is a really good place right now. International basketball is an all-time great place. We have 7 straight MVPs that were not born in the United States now. I believe that's a stat, something crazy like that. And we were just talking about Team Canada, but Team Spain is always good at basketball. Team France is on a horizon of potentially competing for a really long time with Wemby and the boys. And so I think I'm just going to try to put a spotlight on different corners of basketball in this segment, whatever that may be. I will be talking plenty NBA draft this offseason, but I will also be vicariously living through Kyle's Wolves and Reg and Kill's Bulls, of course. That'll get my main attention throughout the offseason. But I appreciate you guys taking flight with us on this pilot today, as I accidentally skipped all the way to the back. Let me actually go through the final slide here, which is, if we want to talk any fantasy hoops, I say we save that for another pod. But we got plenty more to share with you guys there, including we had our debut season of a cool dynasty with Commissioner Kyle. If you want to do like the briefest of spark notes there for what we did.
Yeah, 10-team dynasty basketball league. It's a lot of fun. That's pretty much it.
That's it.
Basketball. Big draft coming up. Cooper Flag. A lot of movement. We all know Killian and his trades. He led the league with 30 moves in the league. I think second place was like 18 in terms of transactions made. He was wheeling and dealing. He was on his Sam Presti trying to pick up a lot of draft capital. But our very own Marcus took home the ring inevitably after a great playoff run. So see if he can start his own dynasty here.
The Dominican national team has Karl Anthony Towns to thank for that, for sure, in his monster year. And my own. I think Tyrese Halliburton was on that squad too, and he's having his own star turn, as we all know. But I think that is the perfect way to end today's episode, Kyle. Thank you for joining me today. Thanks for talking some ball. I hope to do this again soon. We're going to have some draft coverage coming your guys' way, as we already said. On the other side of this finals, we'll do a whole breakdown of what happened, be able to hopefully crown a winner. We'll even jump into the league awards, which we didn't touch on today. Defensive Player of the Year, MVP, and so on. Rookie of the Year, Stephon Castle, also on my Dominican national team. So hopefully that bodes for a bright future. And hopefully we had a bright future for this podcast. This was just episode 1, but thank you again for joining us. Kyle, you have anything you want to say to the people before I log us off?
Just looking forward to the rest of these finals, hoping for some more great finishes. So thank you all for joining us.
Yes, sir. And OKC in 5. That's our call right here.
The
They're never going to lose again. This won't age poorly at all. All right.